Hello and welcome to the British Steam Locomotive podcast show series, episode 4, The Great Western Railway's Castle Class 460s. Sit back and enjoy this show. The Great Western Railway's chief mechanical engineer was Charles Collett. He digged into Churchward's back catalogue. George Jackson Churchward developed two types of express engines, the 440 City class, which today one of them is preserved, number 3440 City of Truro, that reached 102 miles an hour in 1904, which is very impressive for a small 440 class, and the Star Class 460s with 4 cylinders. But Collett developed the Star Class design further into the Castle Class 460s as you see today. The class prototype, the class Pioneer, number 4073 Carefully Castle, was displayed at the exhibition in Wembley in 1924, sitting alongside number 4472 Flying Scotsman, which is the Gresley A3. In the exchange trials, number 4079 Pendennis Castle was swapped with Gresley Pacific Victor Wilde. The smaller castle was matched on performance and won the battle of fuel economy. It wasn't just the East Coast that the Great Western Railway impressed. In 1926, number 5000 Lordston Castle went for running trials on the London, Midland and Scottish Railway, and they were so impressed that they ordered a full batch of these things over the full set of drawings. But that was obviously rejected, so they built the Royal Scots instead. 171 castles were built between 1923 and 1950. They hauled famous express trains such as the Bristolian, Cornishman, Cornish Riviera Express, the Torbay Express from Paddington to Kingswear via Bristol and back via Newbury, and most famously the Cheltenham Flyer. This was publicised in the 30s as the world's fastest train, when I don't know the number, which I know the name of this castle, Tregenna Castle, reached at 87.8 miles an hour. That was really fast, reaching Paddington from Cheltenham. I mean, these engines can be a speed locomotive. They were known as engines that did speed to the west, even though it went to the Kings. That glory went to the King Class 460s. But the Kings I will do in another podcast show in the later this year. Alright, now let's get back to these castle engines, these fantastic machines. Great Western Haulage was publicising holidaymakers to travel to the west, to Devon, Cornwall, even Birmingham, and mostly Pembroke, and to Wales. So you got the Red Dragon Express, that was hauled by a castle. Sometimes you get the Cambrian Coast Express to Shrewsbury, and then the manor classes would take over the train to Aberystwyth. So many holiday trains as you can count, that the castles on the Great Western Railway hauled these famous trains from Paddington to Birmingham on the Midland to Cornwall on the west. So, impressive engines with 3,000 gallon tenders, then upgraded to 4,000 gallon tenders to run great distances and also to fill water up on the move with water troughs in mind. The bad bit is poor coal and the valve gear. Now poor coal is really bad for an engine. So mostly built with Welsh coal in mind. The coal was Welsh, the firebox was designed to burn it. To fire a Great Western Castle, you just pull the flap up in between shovelfuls of coal. Open and close a flap in between shovelfuls when you're running on the main line, and it's really fantastic that these engines can really go really fast, comfortable to drive, and proving to be early competition to Flying Scotsman and the A3s. In the 1960s, a couple of them had one last hurrah to work a special rail tour from Paddington to Plymouth and back in 1964. So these engines were Cluncastle and Earl of Ducie. Now all of these express trains were castle hauled or king hauled. As I said, the kings will be described later in the year on other podcast shows. Now to the preservation list. Number 4079 Pendennis Castle melted her fire bars when she was withdrawn, but then was overhauled at Swindon Works, where most of the castles and famous Great Western engines were built. Pendennis Castle spent her lifetime in Australia before being brought back to the UK for restoration work to mainline standards. Next is 5029 Nunney Castle was restored in 1990 to work on the main line, and she hardly stopped working between overhauls, proving to be one of the busiest castles in recent years. Then there's the famous castle that was built in the 1950s, number 7029 Cluncastle, one of Tyneside pride and joy. They have two castles, Cluncastle and Barbary Castle. As I forgot to mention, most castles were renamed after earls, even though they were named after castles in England of the Great Western Railway. 21 named after earls, 12 after Battle of Britain aircraft, and most famously I.K. Brunel. 5043 Earl of Mount Edgecombe was restored in 2008 and working faster trains ever since, with vintage trains, and also pulls the Shakespeare Express between Birmingham Moor Street and Stratford upon Avon. You may see these castles in action today, but when enthusiasts or enginemen will tell you their stories of the Great Western castles, they will tell you about their stories when they have footplate rides on the castles to Devon. That was the most exciting experience you would ever see today. That's all from me. The next podcast show will be a surprise. So that's it from me. Bye for now.